Good evening. I'm Ferdinand Thomas, and this is the Cultural Immersion Experience assignment. So, for our overview, we're going to go over four key elements. We're going to go over the historical oppression, two events, and we'll touch on three lessons from those two events that I went on. And we'll have an interview from agency. We'll also have an individual interview, and then we'll have a summary and counseling application and references. So the four key elements that we're going to go over in this project is the cultural similarities and differences, the common attitudes, beliefs, and values, customs, practices, and behaviors, and spirituality and religious practice. So the group that I followed was the homeless. So we're going to go over these with the homeless community, and we're going to touch on some key points. So the cultural similarities in Glassman 2024, census, the census article, we went over a couple of different things. Lack of education was an issue for homeless who were trying to recover. They all had a need for life services, and I would say, going back to the lack of education, I would say that that's a similarity, because the lack of education is it's a pretty high percentage of homeless who are having, they don't have more than a high school education, and some of them who don't have the high school education. Very few have collegiate educations. But what they definitely have as a similarity is the vast majority of homeless, really worldwide, have a need for life services. Some of them need housing, some of them need food, some of them need medical care, and the list goes on. There's various, and it varies from person to person. Within the homeless community, we have a high unemployment. There's a lot of people who are not working, some of them because they're older, but then there's a bunch of people who are in the working age that, they're either having trouble finding work, or they're just not working. And then there's also other reasons. It's also mental health is a thing. And my demeanor for is because, like, I got to, and I'm going to talk about it later on in the demonstration, but I got to see a firsthand view, and I'm just kind of like, it's in my mind right now, thinking about that view that I was able to see firsthand of homelessness, and it kind of hurt my feelings. But we'll get into that. Men are usually the larger percentage of homeless shelter guests, right? So this is pretty common. The other thing that's pretty common is you have a pretty close percentage between melanated and Caucasian, and then the remaining percentage is a melting pot of a bunch of different types of a bunch of different ethnic groups of people. But I think the alarming percentage here is the homeless throughout the nation is represented by 37%, right? The highest percentage of homeless is melanated people. That would be people who consider themselves Black, Negro, colored, Moorish American, Hebrew Israelite, all of that. And if this 37%, this is the highest percent in the shelters, but melanated people represent somewhere between 13 and 17% of the national population. And the Caucasian population is much, much higher of the overall population, but they're almost equal in the shelters. I think this is something that needs to be looked at. So we also have common attitudes, beliefs, and values. I mean, these are some negative common beliefs and values, and hopelessness, and non-triumphant, and government cutbacks. But I would also say that there are some positive ones. You got a bunch of the homeless who might be, happy because of getting a meal that they like. Like there's certain things that I would say all people are happy about, even if they don't have much. But a common attitude is hopelessness. The common attitude is that they're not going to win. So non-triumphant and back-to-back challenges. That's regular. Keon and Hosser 2022. We were able to see some of those attitudes, beliefs, and values, and many of the people from that study believe that the government cutbacks, inflation, and other government types of situations are connected to the cause of homelessness. So, with the customs, practices, and behaviors, I went through Hamarat and Merzali Selakoglu 2020, and they opened the door to understanding some of the drug use. Um, lightly touched on the medical side, what people may be suffering from in health, but there's a lot of wandering. I would imagine a lot of people see this. We can see this with the eye test. People are wandering throughout the day. They're waiting to go back to the shelter. Maybe the shelter doesn't open at a certain time until a certain time, so they're not able to go to the shelter until then. So they're just walking down the street, or they're hanging out outside of Wawa, or maybe they're in the middle of the street. Got a sign, "We'll work for food," and taking donations. It's a lot of different ways we see the manifestation. Um, and a lot of the homeless go to the library, right? So this is one of the few places where the homeless can go and they can just sit and relax throughout the day. And if it rains, it rains. They don't feel it. They got a hard roof over their head. Maybe it's really, really hot outside. Who knows? But this is one of the safe havens for homeless. A lot of the times is the local libraries. As I said before, drug use is for some it's a custom, it's a practice. And then there's you got both sides of homeless. You got the side that has given up, then you've got the side that is optimistic about recovering from this. And so a bunch of them are searching for opportunities. They're looking for jobs. They're just open to whatever is going to work. So we've got a it's varying polarities in the vibration of homelessness. So the spirituality and religious practice, I mean, we got a whole lot of them. I mean, it's some shelters around the nation are melting pots, right? So Gindra 2021, we use their article to get a look see at how religion is being practiced, how spiritual practice are being used. And in that article, they touched on how spiritual practice and religious practice helps to helps the homeless to get out of problems, get afloat, to get some balance, to get some equilibrium. And because we have a melting pot in these shelters, there's many different religions that are practiced. Some people practice Buddhism, many practice Christianity, some practice Islam, others practice other religions. There's some of the homeless practice Wicca, some of the homeless practice some of the more ancient religions that aren't as popular today. So but there are also atheists. Like I said, it's a melting of people. You never really know who or what background of people are going to be inside of a homeless shelter. We bump our heads when we bump our heads, and then we go through a process to get back up and stand on our own 2 feet. Historical oppression, All right. So from a few different articles, Giuseppe et al. 2022, Farrago et al. 2021, and Weaver 2023, I took a look at the safety issues that homeless are facing. As you can see in this photo, sometimes there are brutal fights and beatings that homeless suffer because maybe they're an easy target to ignorant people. But there's also redlining and gentrification. We got a lot that's going on with our local governments where maybe they want to raise the value of a piece of land, but they're not. Maybe they're not focusing on raising the value with each human being who lives in those areas, and so the land keeps getting more and more expensive. Um, also, also jobs require more experience, more education, and then they might not pay. They might not increase the pay. So even some of the homeless who have some of them have jobs. It's not everybody who's unemployed, but some of the ones who have jobs, they're even with 50 to 60 hours, they may not be earning enough money to be able to purchase or rent a location for themselves. So these are all things that have to be thought about. The gentrification, it's funny that I'm even on this right now. They did a gentrification right down the street from where I live at in Newport News, probably about 10 miles down the street downtown. And they brought down, I think it was Ridley Square apartments, and then they built up these new high rises. They look really nice, but it really changes the dynamic in the downtown area, and raises the property value. Well, there's a lot of people who won't be able to afford soon. So these are things that need to be thought about. Two events. So I was very blessed to to be able to help feed the homeless and help pack up the trailer. So there's emergency shelters that I know of, and so I helped them pack up the trailer. I spent some time with the homeless. A couple, 2, 3, 4 hours. I wasn't even clocking the time, to be honest with you. I was just really enjoying the fulfillment that I was getting from helping. So, but I also learned some lessons. In addition to fulfillment, I learned patience, listening for understanding, and recognizing possible triggers. I didn't really realize how easily some of the homeless would be triggered by, in conversation, and I was able to see that. And I'm going to go into a little experience, of running into that problem with triggers. April 24th, 2024, visited a homeless campsite. So one of the guys who I met, he invited me. So while I was there, I hung out for a while. I got a chance to see how he sets up his living space, and to keep rain off of him and to keep animals away and things of that nature. He had a process. So I really learned the gratitude for the little, and collectivism, because a bunch of the homeless, even though they didn't sleep right next to each other, they were within reach of each other. So if one person needed something, the other person might have it, and that other person got something that this person needs, and so they looked out for each other. But I also learned the importance of goals, of creating goals, and you get to see what happens when you have a group of people who don't. Goals may not be that important to them. So the agency where I did the interviews, and I honestly, I talked to a bunch of people at Williamsburg House of Mercy in Williamsburg, Virginia, and as you can see, their mission statement is there. They're very much about care and providing a safe environment for their guests. So they handle. They're basically like the food bank from Williamsburg all the way to West Point, and then there's an entity or multiple entities in I believe maybe just the food bank from West Point to Richmond. They Richmond entities handle that. Excuse me. They're connected to multiple providers of life services in Williamsburg. So 3E, United Way. Um, I mean, so many different organizations. They're connected to them, and they have like a first name basis with a lot of the other organizations. Williamsburg House of Mercy provides an in-day shelter for the homeless. And they come in, they get food. There's lunch served every day. I'm not sure if breakfast is served every day, but I think dinner is too. They have a washer and dryer, so people need to wash their clothes. That's a big help. And then they also refer guests to other entities like 3E and United Way. Um, Certain services House of Mercy doesn't provide, so they send out those referrals. Then they also advocate for safety, care, and empowerment. So however they can help a guest get themselves back in to a position to really help themselves, they're doing it. I was able to interview Aaron Godbout. He's from Yorktown, and Aaron is 48 years old, Caucasian guy. I mean, one of the most brilliant dudes I've ever talked to. When I say this guy is extremely intelligent, I mean it. But he's a victim of his own mind. He's, in my opinion, he's locked into the past of things that happened with his mother, and he's not able to get past it. So he has heavy misogynistic views, and he doesn't mind sharing those in public, which doesn't really go. It doesn't really work too well. If you want to become a member of society, you got to have a certain amount of respect for people, and I think that he does. But once he's triggered, there's no stopping on the misogynistic views. I mean, it gets a little out of control. But yeah, him and his mother had some kind of an issue. She told him he had to leave. And I do believe he was suffering from mental health issues at that point, and still is suffering from mental health issues. So he's been gone from his home for quite a while. His mom's been taking care of his daughter. And yeah, so he likes watching sports. That's kind of what he does. Besides doing a lot of studying, like he studies just because he likes to. When I think about this project, this immersion project, I would say that similarities and differences, and cultural experiences and family and all this stuff is super important. But I think that for me, it all summarizes down to homeless people are real people, and we gotta do right by them. Just like we do right by anybody else. We gotta live in a space where we're not thinking about money all the time. We're thinking about the care of people. Um, I think that also what I got from all of this in my, and that's why I put it in my summary, that homeless people have to have someone who cares about them. They have to believe that someone cares about them, and then things change. I don't even know how to even really explain how helping Aaron Godbout, it kind of, it's, I could see it in his eyes. It was almost like he felt like somebody cared about him that he wasn't expecting to care about him. And it changed his demeanor, even just for a few minutes. So and I think advocating for healthy food at these shelters, advocating for more available services that are competent. These are all things that I picked up from this project. Counseling applications, listening, do no harm. ACA 2014. Um, I also learned that there are many volunteers out here, and they're putting a lot of money out to help. They're putting a lot of time out to help the homeless. So that information was good for advocating. I also learned that the homeless need counseling services just as much or more than anyone else. And these are my references. Got quite a few of them. And that concludes my presentation. Thank y'all so much.